Right now, somewhere in the middle of the Sahara Desert, buried under a thin layer of sand, there is a skeleton of a whale. Not a toy, not a replica, a real 40-foot-long skeleton of an ancient whale lying in one of the driest, most lifeless places on Earth. Its bones have been there for longer than human civilization has existed, longer than our species has walked the planet, and it is not alone. There are hundreds of them, scattered across the sand like some kind of graveyard that was never supposed to be found. Now here is the question that should keep you up tonight. How does a whale end up in the middle of a desert, 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean? The answer is simple, and it is terrifying. It did not end up there. The ocean left it behind. Because this desert, this endless, bone-dry wasteland of rock and sand, used to be the bottom of the sea. And not just any sea, a sea so vast, so deep, and so full of life that it would make the modern Mediterranean look like a puddle. Today, we are going to do something no human being can do in real life. We are going to rewind time 50 million years into the past. And we are going to watch, minute by minute, as one of the most dramatic transformations in the history of this planet unfolds. We are going to watch the ocean disappear. Let us start with what we can see today, because the evidence is not hidden. It is not locked in some secret archive or buried miles underground. It is lying right there on the surface in plain sight. You just have to know where to look. In the western part of Egypt, about 100 miles southwest of Cairo, there is a valley called Wadi al-Hitan in Arabic that means the Valley of the Whales, and it earned that name the hard way. In the early 1900s, geologists working in the area started finding bones. At first, they assumed they were dinosaur remains, but the shapes were wrong. The vertebrae were too long, too fluid, too perfectly curved. These were not the bones of creatures that walked on land. These were the bones of creatures that swam. Over the decades, researchers pulled more than 1,000 whale fossils out of the sand in that valley alone. Complete skeletons, some of them 40-50 feet long, jawbones with teeth still intact, ribs curving in perfect arcs as if the animal had just taken its last breath and settled onto the seafloor. Except the seafloor was gone, replaced by sand and silence, and a sun that would kill you in hours if you were not prepared. But the whales are only the beginning. Across the Sahara, in places where no living thing can survive for more than a few days without water, scientists have found fossilized coral reefs. Not fragments, entire reef systems stretching for miles, preserved in limestone that was once the bottom of a shallow tropical sea. They have found the shells of ancient sea urchins, the teeth of prehistoric sharks, the impressions of jellyfish pressed into rock like photographs from another world. In southern Libya, deep in the desert, there are limestone formations riddled with the fossils of creatures called nummulites. These were tiny, coin-shaped organisms that lived in warm, shallow seas. They are so abundant in some parts of the Sahara that the ground literally crunches under your feet when you walk on it. Every step you take, you are walking on the remains of millions of sea creatures that lived and died in an ocean that no longer exists. And here is what makes it even more unsettling. The Great Pyramids of Giza, one of the most iconic structures ever built by human hands, are made from limestone blocks that are packed with these same nummulite fossils. The ancient Egyptians carved their monuments from the bones of a dead ocean. They built eternity out of something that had already ended. Now, let us rewind. Let us go back, way back. 50 million years ago, the planet you are living on looked nothing like it does today. Nothing. If you could somehow float above the Earth and look down, you would not recognize it. The continents were in different positions. Some of them were connected in ways that seem impossible now. Others were separated by oceans that have since vanished without a trace. And right in the middle of everything, stretching from what is now Spain all the way to what is now Indonesia, There was a body of water so enormous that it makes the Pacific Ocean seem modest by comparison. This was the Tethys Sea. Some scientists call it the Tethys Ocean, because calling it a sea feels like an understatement. It was a monster. At its peak, the Tethys covered an area larger than the entire continent of Africa. It sat between two massive landmasses, Laurasia to the north, which would eventually become Europe, Asia, and North America, and Gondwana to the south, which would become Africa, South America, India, Australia, and Antarctica. The Tethys was the space between them, the gap, the breathing room that the planet left between its two great continents. And it was not empty. It was one of the most biologically productive oceans the world has ever seen. The water was warm, tropical in most places. Shallow continental shelves stretched for hundreds of miles, creating perfect conditions for coral reefs, for algae blooms, for the kind of explosive biodiversity that turns an ocean into a living engine. The Tethys was not just an ocean, it was a factory of life, and it operated at full capacity for tens of millions of years. Now imagine standing on the bottom of this ocean, not with scuba gear, not with a submarine. Just imagine the water drained away for a moment, and you're standing on the floor of the Tethys, 50 million years ago, in the exact spot where the Sahara Desert will one day be. What would you see? First, you would see the reef. Miles and miles of coral rising from the seafloor in ridges and towers and branching formations that look like underwater cities. The colors would be almost impossible to describe. Corals in every shade of orange, pink, and purple, sponges the size of armchairs, anemones waving in the current like slow-motion fireworks. Swimming through this reef, you would find creatures that no human has ever seen alive. Basilosaurus, one of the earliest true whales, a predator that stretched 60 feet long and hunted like a sea serpent. Its body long and sinuous, nothing like the whales we know today. It had tiny vestigial hind legs, leftovers from its ancestors who once walked on land. Think about that for a second. This creature's great-great-grandparents had legs. They walked on solid ground, and then they went back into the water and became something else entirely. Alongside Basilosaurus, you would find Dorudon, a smaller whale, about 15 feet long, with a dolphin-like body and a mouth full of teeth designed for catching fish. These animals were everywhere in the Tethys. They were the kings of this ocean. And below them, on the seafloor, you would find armies of smaller creatures. Numulates by the billion, their tiny shells piling up on the bottom like snowflakes, building layers of sediment that would one day become the limestone of the pyramids. Sea urchins, starfish, crabs, clams, oysters. The floor of the Tethys was a graveyard and a nursery at the same time. Things died and settled into the mud, and new things grew on top of them, and the cycle repeated itself over and over for millions of years, building up layers of rock, hundreds of feet thick. This was the ocean that once existed where the Sahara is now. This was the world beneath the sand. If you are watching this and your mind is already starting to stretch, if you are already wondering how something this massive could just vanish, you are asking the right question. Because the Tethys did not just evaporate overnight, it was murdered. Slowly, relentlessly, over the course of tens of millions of years by the most powerful force on this planet. Not wind, not weather, plate tectonics. Here is what happened. About 100 million years ago, the supercontinent Gondwana started to break apart. It did not shatter like glass. It pulled apart slowly, piece by piece, like tearing bread. First, South America separated from Africa. Then India broke free from everything and started drifting north. And when I say drifting, I mean it was moving fast, at least by geological standards. India was racing toward Asia at a speed of about 15 centimeters per year. That does not sound like much, but over millions of years it adds up to thousands of miles, and India was not just drifting, it was on a collision course. Around 50 to 55 million years ago, it hit. India slammed into the southern edge of the Asian continent with a force that is almost impossible to comprehend. Two massive tectonic plates, each carrying billions of tons of rock, grinding into each other at a speed that was glacial in human terms, but catastrophic in geological terms. The impact did not just stop India, it crumpled the Earth. The collision zone buckled, folded, and pushed upward. Rock that had been lying flat on the seafloor was shoved miles into the sky. And what rose from that collision was the Himalayas. The tallest mountain range on Earth was born from the death of an ocean. Mount Everest, the highest point on the planet, is made of limestone and marine fossils. The summit of Everest, 29,000 feet above sea level, contains the remains of creatures that once lived on the bottom of the Tethys Sea. Let that sink in for a moment. The top of the world is made of seashells. But India was only part of the story. While India was crashing into Asia from the east, Africa was pushing north into Europe from the south. And Africa moved slowly, but it moved with the kind of unstoppable grinding force that reshapes entire continents. As Africa pushed northward, it began to close the western end of the Tethys. The ocean that had once stretched unbroken from Spain to Southeast Asia started to get squeezed. The passage narrowed. The water had fewer and fewer places to go. If you could watch this process on a time lapse, sped up so that 1,000,000 years passes in a second, you would see the Tethys shrinking like a puddle in the sun. The continental shelves that had supported those enormous coral reefs were being lifted out of the water. Shallow seas that had teemed with life for millions of years were draining, exposing the seafloor to open air for the first time in geological history. The creatures that lived there had nowhere to go. The whales that had ruled the Tethys for millions of years found their hunting grounds shrinking, their food chains collapsing, their world literally disappearing beneath them. And they died, not in some sudden catastrophe, not in a single dramatic event. They died slowly, generation by generation, as the ocean they depended on was taken away from them. Their bodies settled to the seafloor one last time, and the seafloor became a desert. Around 6 million years ago, something happened that might be the single most dramatic geological event in the last 20 million years. Africa finally pushed close enough to Europe to close the Strait of Gibraltar, or rather to close the passage that would one day become the Strait of Gibraltar. The last connection between the Atlantic Ocean and what remained of the Tethys Sea was severed. The Mediterranean, the last surviving remnant of the once mighty Tethys, was cut off from the world ocean. And then it began to die. This event is called the Messinian Salinity Crisis, and the name does not do it justice. What happened was that the Mediterranean Sea, deprived of its connection to the Atlantic, started to evaporate. The rivers feeding into it could not replace the water fast enough. The sea level dropped and dropped and kept dropping. Over the course of roughly 700,000 years, the Mediterranean lost most of its water. Some scientists believe it nearly dried up completely, leaving behind a vast scorching basin thousands of feet below sea level. Imagine standing on the edge of what was once the French Riviera and looking out over a landscape that looks like Death Valley, but 1,000 times larger. A blinding white expanse of salt flats, so hot that nothing could survive on them. Canyons carved by the rivers that once fed the sea, now cutting through dry rock like scars on the Earth's face. The Nile, the Rhone, and other rivers carved gorges thousands of feet deep as they chased the retreating water level downward. And at the very bottom of this basin, in the deepest parts, there may have been scattered hyper-salty lakes, so concentrated with minerals that they glowed strange colors under the sun. The Mediterranean had become a dead zone, a ghost of the Tethys that once covered half the world. But then, about 5.3 million years ago, something broke. The land barrier at Gibraltar was breached. Maybe it was tectonic shifting. Maybe it was erosion. Maybe it was the sheer weight of the Atlantic pressing against a dam that was never meant to hold. Whatever the cause, the Atlantic found a crack, and then it poured through. Scientists call this the Zanclean flood, and it may have been the most spectacular flood in the history of the Earth. Water cascaded through the breach at Gibraltar with a force that dwarfs any waterfall that exists today. Some models suggest the flow rate was 1,000 times greater than the Amazon River. The Mediterranean basin, that vast dry canyon, filled back up in a geological instant, possibly as little as a few months to 2 years. The sea came roaring back, but it was no longer the Tethys. The Tethys was gone forever. What filled the basin was Atlantic water, a new sea in an old grave. Now, here is the part where the story gets even stranger. Because the Sahara is not the only desert with an ocean buried underneath it. This pattern repeats all over the world, and once you know what to look for, you start seeing it everywhere. Let us go east. The Gobi Desert, stretching across northern China and southern Mongolia, is one of the harshest environments on the planet. Temperatures swing from -40 in winter to +50 in summer. The wind strips the landscape down to bare rock. Nothing grows, nothing survives for long. And yet, the Gobi is one of the richest fossil beds on Earth. In the 1920s, an expedition led by Roy Chapman Andrews, who some people believe was the inspiration for Indiana Jones, discovered dinosaur eggs in the Gobi for the first time in history. But they also found something else: marine fossils, shells, corals, and the remains of sea creatures embedded in rock formations that are now thousands of feet above sea level. Parts of the Gobi were once covered by shallow seas that connected to the Tethys system. The ocean was there, then it left, and the desert took its place. If you have been finding this video interesting so far, I want to ask you a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button. I know everyone says that, but here is why it actually matters. When you subscribe, it tells the algorithm that this kind of content is worth sharing. And that means more videos like this one get made and get seen by people who are curious about the same things you are. So if you want to keep exploring, subscribe. It takes 1 second and it makes a real difference. Now, let us keep going. The Arabian Peninsula today, it is synonymous with desert, sand dunes stretching to the horizon, some of the lowest rainfall numbers on the planet. Oil beneath the surface, and that oil is the key to the whole story. Because what is oil? Oil is the compressed, cooked, chemically transformed remains of ancient marine organisms. Plankton, algae, tiny sea creatures that lived and died in a warm, shallow ocean hundreds of millions of years ago. Their bodies sank to the bottom, got buried under layers of sediment, and over millions of years, heat and pressure turned them into the substance that modern civilization runs on. Every drop of oil that comes out of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, and the rest of the Gulf states is liquid evidence that this land was once an ocean floor. The oil fields of the Middle East are, quite literally, the fossilized remains of the Tethys Sea. When you fill up your car with gasoline, you are burning the dead bodies of creatures that swam in an ocean that vanished tens of millions of years ago. The entire global economy runs on the ghost of the Tethys. Let us go further. The American Southwest, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, red rock canyons, mesas, the kind of landscape that Hollywood uses as a shorthand for empty, desolate, and ancient. And it is ancient. But it was not always empty. About 70 to 80 million years ago, during the late Cretaceous period, a massive body of water called the Western Interior Seaway split North America in half. It stretched from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the Arctic Ocean, cutting the continent into 2 island landmasses. The seaway was shallow, warm, and absolutely teeming with life. Mosasaurs, giant marine reptiles that could grow to 50 feet long, patrolled the waters like underwater dinosaurs, because that is essentially what they were. Giant sea turtles the size of cars swam alongside them. Ammonites, those beautiful spiral-shelled creatures that look like something from an alien planet, were everywhere. And when this seaway finally drained, as tectonic activity lifted the land and the sea retreated, it left behind the rock formations that define the American West today. The chalk beds of Kansas, the shale deposits of Montana, the limestone bluffs of Texas, all of it seafloor, all of it evidence of an ocean that once cut a continent in two. There is something about all of this that is hard to sit with, and I think it is worth taking a moment to actually feel it, not just understand it intellectually. We look at deserts and we see permanence. We see landscapes that feel like they have been there forever. The Sahara feels eternal. The Gobi feels ancient in a way that goes beyond human time. When you stand in a desert, you feel like you are standing on something that has always been and always will be, but that is an illusion, a powerful one, but still an illusion. 50 million years ago, the Sahara was the bottom of a tropical sea full of whales and coral reefs and billions of tiny creatures whose shells would one day become the stones of the pyramids. 100 million years ago, the middle of North America was an ocean full of sea monsters. 300 million years ago, parts of what is now the driest desert on Earth, the Atacama in Chile, were covered by glaciers. The planet does not care about our sense of permanence. It operates on timescales that make everything we have ever known look like a single frame in an endless film. Mountains rise and erode, oceans appear and vanish, continents drift across the surface like slow-motion clouds. Nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent. The ground you are standing on right now has been everything. It has been the bottom of an ocean, the slope of a mountain, the floor of a forest, the surface of a glacier. It has been all of these things, and it will be all of them again. The only constant is change. And the speed of that change is so slow, so far beyond human perception that we trick ourselves into thinking it is not happening at all. But the whale skeletons in the Sahara know better. They are lying there in the sand, under the sun, exactly where the ocean left them. They have been waiting for 50 million years, and they will still be there long after every city we have ever built has crumbled to dust. Let me leave you with one more image. Right now, at this very moment, the tectonic plates beneath your feet are moving. Africa is still pushing north, closing the Mediterranean a little more every year. In about 250 million years, give or take, the continents are expected to merge again into a new supercontinent. Scientists have already given it a name. They call it Pangaea Proxima, or sometimes Amasia. When that happens, the Mediterranean will disappear completely. It will be crushed out of existence, just like the Tethys before it. And whatever is left of our civilization, if anything is left at all, will be compressed into a thin layer of rock, sandwiched between the pages of a geological story that is far, far older than we are. If this video made you see the world a little differently, drop a comment and tell me which part hit you the hardest. Was it the whales in the desert, the seashells on Everest, the oil beneath the Arabian Peninsula? I read every single comment, and some of the best ideas for future videos come from you. Share this with someone who would find this as mind-bending as you did, and if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. There is so much more to explore, so much more that the ground beneath us is hiding. I will see you in the next one.